So again, thank you very much for being here and welcome all. Now, I would like to start with the part one, so we can move on to the next slide and explain a little bit the rationale behind the partnership and localization policy and its use for Terre des Hommes. First of all, one thing that I wanted to discuss and wanted to explain is that this was made possible by the support of the Somaha Foundation that contributed greatly to strategic orientations that Terre des Hommes wanted to have when it comes to partnership and localization. So the first and important thing that came to Terre des Hommes was as many other NGOs in the sector, is learnings from the Grand Bargain and the Charter for Change ideological alignment. There is within the sector and within the rationale of the sector, these two major topics that are increasingly important, that represent what must happen in terms of power shift for Terre des Hommes and for also all the NGOs, international NGOs, UN agencies, and major donors in the sector, involving local and national actors more in the operations that we have in humanitarian development. There was really in the 2021-2024 strategy at Terre des Hommes a willingness to raise this topic as a structuring one for Terre des Hommes and for its future. And it materialized in 2024 with this global partnership and localization strategy. So there was really a willingness to analyze ourselves and to have it as participative as possible, involving pilot countries, which are Albania, Hungary, India, Nepal, Bangladesh, but also asking questions to local NGOs in Africa and the Middle East, North Africa. And we started, this reflection with a document that was before the partnership and localization policy, that was really what we call a partnership situation analysis report, which was really an introspective document where we wanted to know better who are we. At Terre des Hommes, we didn't really have this in-depth reflection about who are we as an INGO for our local partners. What do our partners want to do with us? What do we want to do with our partners? What should we do about our funding to local and national actors? What should we do about our capacity development with them? And it needed to be as participative as possible to ensure that all reflection was represented in this scope of intervention. We had the chance to work with a lot of partners that are here today to analyze ourselves, and we came up with a localization definition and a localization policy that was validated in early March 2024 by TDH's executive committee. And you can see the localization definition here, but really the idea is to recognize, respect, and strengthen the leadership of local authorities and local civil society in the humanitarian and development sector, and better respond to the needs of the population and prepare national actors for future humanitarian interventions. So this is really the ideological background. Next slide, please. Now, what does it mean in terms of rationale? The idea of this policy is to keep alive Terre des Hommes' motto. Terre des Hommes' goals is to provide, quality services to children across the world. There is really the idea of serving children in a more equitable and sustainable way with local partners, and really the idea of a top-down subordination feeling or decision-making that really existed in the sector so far, where we considered local partners wrongly so as just what we call implementing partners. And I think there was a real willingness to structure a different kind of partnership where the co-creation made more sense. And so this is really where the policy leads us to in the coming years. Provide more decision-making power, more governance power to the partnerships that we have with local and national partners, and contribute to the decolonization of aid, meaning that, moving away from from a colonial construct where Western point of view and Western standards are perpetuating power imbalances for local and national actors. How do we do that? We decided to go with an intermediary role that is different. So this is something that did not exist at Terre des Hommes before. We defined a new role for ourselves in the accompaniment of or the co-creation of programs with our local and national partners. And this is starting today for the years to come. But we want to become we want to develop an organizational development expertise where we can support our local and national partners' capacity on topics such as, fundraising, finance, logistics, compliance, but just everything that surrounds a project and everything that revolves and makes an organization able to perform good projects the way major donors expect it to be, and just to provide qualitative services. So there's really this willingness to accompany our partners in the organizational development. There's also the use of our programmatic expertise. We want to maintain something that we know we did well and that came out of our analysis when we worked with local partners. But our strength rely on child protection, health, access to justice, and migration. These are technical expertise that Terre des Hommes has operated across the world, and that makes sense for us to keep and for us to help strengthen our local and national partners and co-create together around these topics. So there is definitely this role that we want to maintain. And finally, the advocacy support. Terre des Hommes enjoys proximity to Geneva and a global decision-making on many humanitarian and development topics, and a certain networking ability, something that we want to give a voice, that we want to use to give a voice to our local and national partners and have them a bit more involved in the design of these decisions and of these humanitarian and development practices. So there is these three major topics that we appreciate to have and we want to work on as part of our global partnership and localization policy. And to do that, we will structure it around 7 principles that we want to operate on. I won't go into detail with all of them, but basically they're summed up in that little graph that you see at the bottom right-hand corner, where we have a new way of doing. We want to work with longer-term and flexible partnerships as much as possible, and within what is possible with our donors. Obviously, there is reality that comes into the game here, but longer-term partnerships and direct a new rationale around funding as well is something that we want to perform in the next few years. The overall quantity of funding that we provide to local and national partners, but also the amount of overhead costs and indirect costs that we can provide to them. Capacity development, and that materializes with Local Link Hub, and Eniko will tell you more about that later. But with an online platform that we are dedicating to it. Also, new practices in the selection in the way we select and the way we identify or align our values with new partners or old partners as well. Methodologies and adapted methodologies that also relies on all the tools that we want to use, new tools that we want to use with our partners. And finally, as I said, decision-making and governance, as well as dialogue, participation, and feedback, changing the practices within the partnership as to how decisions are made and how dialogue is operated. Next slide, please. So this materializes with concrete goals that are that have indicators and that we will track, that we will review regularly and measure, and there will be objectives that would have by 2024, by 2026, and by 2028. Now, these objectives, one of the major one is perhaps the one that you can see on the top. It's to reach 20% of our operational share as Terre des Hommes globally, to be transferred to local and national partners to reach 20%. At the moment, in 2023, it was 10.6%, which means that by 2028, we'd like to increase and double the amount of budget that our operational share goes to. Operational budget goes to local and national partners. And this is something that is inscribed in the policy among other objectives, such as dedicated organizational development staff and partnership staff at country level, to make sure that we can increase the time and the resources that we dedicate to our local partners in terms of organizational development, in terms of technical expertise, This will be done through the opening of financial resources that we intend to have by 2026, once further progress has been done to free some budget for it at global level. The launching of Local Link Hub, I will let Eniko describe that later, but an online capacity development platform will be dedicated to our localization partnership and localization commitments as part of the policy, and the launch of mutual due diligence assessment to reduce what I mentioned earlier, but like end a top-down subawarding kind of approach where we now value and put the value of our partnership and the values that we share with our local and national partners at the center of the partnership, and recognize the strengths of our partners and our weaknesses as well as an international NGO. You can see the policy tracking indicators here at the bottom left-hand corner. There is specific targets that we aim to reach and that we will review annually. This is something that will be followed up thoroughly at headquarters and in collaboration with the pilot countries in the first year. But they relate to some of the topics I mentioned earlier, the lengths of the partnerships we have, the funding that we have, and its overall budget, the overall operations budget, or the indirect cost that we carry out, we give to our local and national actors, our methodologies and the tools that we use, and the number of delegations that are able to do capacity development. So these are basically the indicators, the measurements that we want to commit to lead us to localization. Next slide, please. And just one last slide, perhaps, that I want to describe. So in order to do this properly, it was important for us to differentiate the partners that we have, because we're all different. It's a practice that Terre des Hommes did not really have in the past. We're going to come up with partnership toolkits that are adapted to our partners' needs and our partners' status as our partners' nature. For example, so you can see at the bottom here the 5 categories that we came up with. There's the governmental institutions that represent really state actors, and that involves a lot of ministries or such kind of actors that we differentiated from international NGOs, for example, such as Terre des Hommes or all the big ones that you can think of, or from private sector partners that we work with in certain cases that can be partners in certain countries. So we wanted really to differentiate that from national NGOs and local CSOs. And these are perhaps a bit more tricky differences that we made here, but national NGOs really operate formally in several areas of a country and represent perhaps what we can consider as a big national NGO that are, has the ability to operate in different regions, is formalized, and has a certain strength in their structure, as opposed to local CSOs that we consider as smaller, sometimes informal in certain countries, or unregistered in certain countries, and that can only operate at a local level or only in one region of the country. And we really wanted to differentiate these partners, because for us, when we did this self-analysis, we identified differences that were key for us to work with. So we're adapting tools to work with these different partners, and we're adapting the languages that we'll use with them, and we're adapting the ways that we're going to track indicators with all of them. That was very important for us to differentiate those partners, to make sure that we respected their nature and the way they work, and we could actually implement a meaningful localization policy. So this policy will come into a document that I will share, that we will share at the end of this later at the end of this webinar in a few days, and you will be able to look at it. It's a document that is about 20 pages, 25 pages, and that sums up everything that I said. I mean, goes in length, and what I said in the past 15 minutes is about a sum up of it. But we're really happy to share this now and commit ourselves to changing it in the coming years. So